This.
Squeezing.
Good evening. Doing some rearranging here. This is the May 24th, 2023 meeting of the Moscow Planning and Zoning Commission. Welcome, everybody. Nice to see you all here. So first item of business is approval of the April 12th, 2023 meeting minutes. Any additions, deletions, corrections? So do we have a motion to approve?
No.
Oh,
I want to have a discussion on it.
Oh, okay,
But I'm waiting for the motion.
okay. So,
Motion to
all
approve.
right, so we have a motion and a second.
Okay, my only discussion is I wasn't here, so I read it very carefully. And then it said that a couple of commissioners made amendments and they were passed. Didn't say what they were. So I would appreciate it if the minutes were a little more specific. So I would know what they were talking about.
Which I didn't catch that either.
And I happen to not bring that particular page. But if you look at, I think it's the second page or something, or almost to the end. But, you know, it said amendments, and I'm going, oh, well, what was it? Unfortunately,
Oh, this was the rehearing, correct?
All
Of the,
subdivisions.
okay, so I wasn't sure because like I said, I wasn't here.
okay, well,
So anyway.
Well, a lot of the times it's Scribner's. What, you know,
Yeah, but, well, that would be nice if that was mentioned.
okay, we will,
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
it's at the very end of item number 3 for the public hearing. In the paragraph, Wilson moved with 2 minor modifications. I think that's what she's referring to.
yes, correct?
yeah.
Yeah,
So I would just like, when that happens, I like them to be in the minutes.
But it goes on to explain 1 in the pedestrian walkway section, 1 in the street connectivity section.
Okay, so
you'd like to-
those were the modifications.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
all right, thank you.
super, okay. So roll call for approval. Sue, start
I
with you.
wasn't here, so I can't approve.
So you're abstained and aye. Rich and
Aye.
Cole? Aye, okay, so minutes are approved. Next is the public comment period. This is for items that are not on the agenda tonight or before city council. Anybody care to speak to the commission? Okay, seeing none, we'll move to the main item on the agenda tonight, the public hearing, a proposal for a comprehensive plan, land use designation, zoning designation, and preliminary subdivision plat for a 51.53 acre property proposed to be annexed into the city of Moscow. So Mike, you're up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. Before you tonight, we have Southern Moscow Comprehensive Plan designation, zoning designation, and preliminary subdivision plat proposal from 2GM LLC. And this is the subject property. It's a little over 51 acres in size. Just south of Moscow, you can see the current city limits boundary. This orange dashed line here currently goes to the west of Prime Land, straddles Schweitzer property, which is located here. Wasson Carey Development here to the south, Germer Shop here to the southwest, Mundy's Welding located here as well, and then primarily to the southeast and in the north, surrounded by agricultural property, as well as Fountains Airfield here to the north. So the applicant's 2GM LLC, they have 3 actions proposed. It's 51.53 acre property proposed to be annexed into the city, generally located south of the South Fork of the Palouse River and east of Highway 95 within the city. Comprehensive plan land use designation is the first action, and it's currently a combination of auto urban, commercial, industrial, and rural and agricultural. And the proposal is the auto urban commercial designation. Rezone proposal from the current designation of motor business and agricultural forestry to just exclusively the motor business zone. And then there's a preliminary plat as well, and that's a 29.46 acre area. Proposals to create 15 lots ranging from 0.82 acres to 4.18 acres in size. And they're referring to it as the SOMO subdivision. So just to recall, the prior to the annexation, Planning and Zoning Commission's tasked with providing City Council recommendation regarding appropriate future land use designation as well as zoning designation to be applied upon the subject property upon annexation, but the council just strictly handles the annexations. So just a closer view of the property. You can see I think I have a map, next slide or two, that shows the different property owners, but you can see this is the new Highway 95 alignment here that ITD's purchased for the Thorn Creek project. And this shows the different property owners. So this was expanded. The property wasn't contiguous to the city limits boundary, so it ended up being expanded because that's a requirement in order to be annexed within the city. So we picked up the ITD's right away for Thorn Creek. We also have a Nathan Wassencarry property here in the yellow dash line. Of course, CHS Prime Land would have become an island with this proposal. So they've agreed to annex the southern half of their property as well. And then another 2GM LLC property. I believe there's a auto detailing business on that property currently. So taking a look at the current comprehensive plan land use designation, currently comprised of 3 designations. So auto, urban, commercial, industrial, and then rural and agricultural there to the south. And the proposal would just be the auto, urban, commercial designation upon annexation. So taking a look at what that says in the comprehensive plan, those designated areas are intended to provide for commercial services and developments that are motor vehicle oriented or those which require large amounts of land. These areas should be located adjacent to existing commercial developments or along major arterials where the vehicle traffic can be accommodated. The developments within these designations should be required to provide significant landscaping, which would be applied to enhancing areas along the street edge, screening parking lots, and buffering adjacent uses. And then it points to the motor business zone as being the most appropriate. So this brings us to the zoning configuration of the area. You can see it's primarily agricultural forestry for this property. It does include some portions of motor business here, and then the other property here to the north. And the proposal would be to rezone to motor business upon annexation of the entire corridor. So looking at the motor business zoning designation, it's intended to provide for the location and grouping of compatible uses having similar operation as they involve enterprises which depend primarily on the transient motor vehicle-based trade. City intends to concentrate those uses to increase public convenience when utilizing such services within the regulation to allow such activities to render the maximum service. And then really just a wide variety of uses, commercial ranging all the way to residential uses are permitted in a motor business zone. So it brings us to the SOMO preliminary plat. Good mention, 29.46 acres, 15 lots, ranging from 0.82 to 4.18 acres in size. There's 2 stormwater detention tracks within the northwest and northeast sections of this development. And there are pedestrian connections to the north and to the south, and we'll get to those a little bit later. But looking at motor business zone, there is no minimum lot size or width requirements within the motor business zone. So obviously all the lots would meet those requirements. So this gives you kind of an idea. This is based upon ITD's Thorn Creek plans. You can see this would be edge of pavement to edge of pavement with these yellow lines. You can see the old 95 and new 95 intersection would be located here. This would connect to the old segment of 95. The eastern portion would connect to the new proposed subdivision, SOMO. And you can see that located in that northwest corner here. So it extend a collector street through the subdivision and terminate on the property boundary to the east. As soon as that property to the east is developed, the road can continue. But those are the 15 lots. You can see that's the proposed grading plan. There is a 100-year floodplain that you can vaguely see. So it extends over and affects about 3-4 of those properties on the north side and the eastern portion of the development. And then there's parkland dedication within a tract. You can see that located here. And that property is all within the floodway. Would like to note the stormwater detention parcel here to the northeast. And then there's one located here at the entrance to detain all the stormwater before it exits into the system. And then there's 2 pedestrian pathways proposed, one located here as well as future utilities stubbed to this property here. And then there's another pathway access road to the stormwater detention pond located here. Just a closer view of that western portion. And this is, just for your reference, this is higher elevation at the highway and drops down to these lots the way they're graded. And shows that flagpole with the utility and the pedestrian easement located here to this segment of the property. And then the eastern portion of the development. You can see that 100-year floodplain line a little more vividly there. So looking at Somo Drive, proposed to be a collector, which means 34 feet in width. There are bike lanes on both sides per our standards, no on sidewalks on both sides as well. Water service, there are existing that were developed within this last year near the entrance to the subdivision, and those are proposed to extend via Somo Drive. Our 2012 comprehensive water system plan indicates the existing system has adequate potable and fire flows. Sanitary sewer, the main currently exists, same location as the water service, that entrance to the subdivision. Also proposed to extend along the Somo Drive alignment. And then the comprehensive sewer system plan indicates the existing system's adequate to serve the additional flow from the subdivision. Storm sewer, like we mentioned before, will be piped and directed to those 2 stormwater detention ponds. And then, of course, the proposed development will need to meet Moscow's stormwater runoff control standards, which require the stormwater to be detained at the pre-development rate. Stormwater is then conveyed to the South Fork of the Palouse River. Parkland dedication, so there are 23.68 acres of net developable land. MB requires 9% dedication, which results in 2.13 acres required. So the applicants proposed the 1.83 acres of parkland in the floodway of the South Fork of the Palouse for a further linear pathway. Future, should say, instead of further, future linear pathway, as well as $4,050 in parkland dedication and lieu fees to satisfy the remainder of the dedication requirement. January 26th of earlier this year, the Parks and Rec Commission considers Parks and Rec staff's recommendation to accept the applicant's proposal, and they voted to recommend approval of the combination of land and in lieu fees to satisfy parkland dedication requirements. And this gives you a better idea of the parkland and then the 2 paths or future pathway locations. So with that, staff recommends the commission conduct a public hearing and upon consideration of testimony received, recommend approval of the proposed comprehensive plan land use designation change from a combination of auto urban, commercial, industrial, and rural and agricultural to the proposed auto urban commercial designation. I recommend approval of the proposed rezone agricultural forestry and motor business to exclusively motor business with no conditions. And then recommend approval of the preliminary plat with 2 conditions. The applicant shall be required to conduct a detailed stormwater discharge analysis to include any mitigation actions necessary to ensure that the stormwater facility shall have no downstream adverse impacts, subject to the approval of the city engineer. And the second, that the applicant shall gain access approval from the Idaho Transportation Department and complete any necessary mitigation for the connection of Somo Drive to the highway system. And I'd originally had 2 additional conditions on the staff report, and the applicant, I believe we had distributed updated plans, and so they had addressed 2 of those conditions. And so now we're just recommending these 2 be carried forward. So in accordance with the commission's decision, comprehensive plan land use amendment, rezone, preliminary plat, direct staff to prepare the RCS documents. Certainly try to answer any questions you had.
Questions for Mike? I do have a couple, and the other than the stormwater and the floodplain, were there other environmental issues that had to be addressed, mitigation, given how the proximity to the river? And I'm hate to say it, but wetlands, there are wetland issues that had to be addressed. I didn't see any mention of that at all.
Well, we don't require a wetlands delineation to be conducted as part of subdivision development. So just because it has Paradise Creek or South Fork of the Palouse River doesn't necessarily necessitate the need for a wetlands delineation. There isn't any property delineated on the National Wetlands Inventory. Just next door, Idaho Transportation Department, I'm sure you've seen the news where they've had to identify wetlands along their corridor. I don't believe there's any identified here, but it's far enough away from the South Fork. You have the floodway itself. I don't believe there's any really wetlands habitat in there. It's floodway and then 100-year floodplain. They're proposing to grade the property. They're required to conduct a no-rise certification, essentially saying that the property's not going to adversely affect any downstream flows if they encroach upon the floodway. And that's why they've pretty much dedicated the whole floodway of the property to the city. And graded it such that those lots will be well elevated from the floodway, and they'll actually be outside of the 100-year floodplain as far as the base flood elevation with the elevation. And they can certainly go through a letter of map amendment on those properties to have them removed from the floodplain with FEMA if they want to.
Okay. So there was no additional permitting required for any of the issues with the floodplain. And I'm just, like with the Highway 95, the Corps of Engineers had to get involved, but that wasn't any kind of a requirement for permitting in this case.
Because that's a federal project.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. One other question I've got is more curiosity than anything, but the intersection with Old 95, could you go back to that one slide that you had?
There we go.
So is that going to be a signaled intersection? Do we know?
Not at this time.
Okay.
Not that I'm aware of, no.
And the section that will be north of where it sweeps into the intersection, is that going to be abandoned?
This area here
Yes,
in the northwest, the corner of the intersection.
correct.
It's my understanding that'll be conveyed to the city of Moscow once. So Old 95, the right of way will be conveyed to the city as well. So this will be removed. I believe there's a sidewalk connection and then pathway connection planned for this area. But essentially, I think the city is anticipated doing some type of beautification project in that area as you enter town.
And what about access to the property that's now going to be included in the annexation that was going to be the county island, the CHS, I guess, that property?
Currently, their only point of access is right here. So there's a ingress and egress, so 2 points of access. That's still planned to maintain that access.
Okay.
So it'll just extend out a little bit further and tie in with the future highway in this location. There's been discussions that they are having with ITD as far as maybe eliminating the access here and relocating that somewhere along Old 95, which might be a little more desirable from a safety standpoint. But at this point in time, ITD's plans show the existing approaches remaining on the northern property. The way they access the southern property is just through the northern property. It's really one site, even though it's split.
Okay. So other questions for Mike?
Oh, if I recall, several years ago, the city had done some realigning of the floodway. Didn't they put in an extra pump station, or did they realign some of the floodway probably 10 years ago?
We had a study conducted, Alta conducted the study as far as the Southeast Moscow Industrial Park, and developed plans and a conditional letter of map amendment that could be submitted to FEMA depending upon work that could be done and what that would do with the floodplain and the floodway in the area. But it was just studied. It was never followed through with because the Southeast Moscow Industrial Park hasn't advanced yet. So.
Okay.
Other questions? Cole? Rich? Victoria? Dennis? Scott? Okay, Mike, thank you very much. And with that, we will open the public hearing. First, we'd like to hear from the applicant, if we might.
My name is Jeff Motley, and my brother and I are the owners of 2GM LLC, and we really kind of understood Highway 95 there pretty well from a contractor's perspective, how it was going to come into the south end of Moscow. And it's a really nice, I think it's like a 5% grade as it comes over Paradise Ridge, and it's really nicely designed highway that comes in and ties into the bridge down at the John Deere dealership. And as it comes in, this piece of property it's just going to be a view to some really nice commercial businesses. Exactly what they are, we don't know, but because of the way it kind of lays out before you, I guess is the best way I can put it, lays out before you. And so anybody traveling north gets, they can see this entire piece of property is what they can do. So maybe they're looking for this kind of business or that kind of business or whatever. They're going to see it all. They can see the entire piece of property. Now, as you're coming, south on Highway 95, what you see is when you're up on top of the hill above the dealership, you see kind of the same thing again. And between the highway project, scheduled to be completed next fall, and this project, should it get approved, I think it's going to really put a really nice look on the south end of Moscow. And I'd be happy to answer any questions if you had any.
Any questions? Super, thanks, Jeff.
Thank you.
Appreciate that. So next, we'd like to hear from anybody in support of the project.
Hello, Shelley Bennett, 2279 Mosier Street in Moscow. I am the broker that brought Jeff this piece of property and said we desperately need small lots for people to build businesses on. And we have most of the lots, people standing in line to buy them because we've been years. The Southeast Moscow Industrial Park concept that you brought up, that makes me laugh a little bit, only because it's been so desperately needed for so long, but we couldn't get everybody on board to do it, to be able to connect it. So this is we were hoping to be part of the Southeast Moscow Industrial Park when he first looked at the property, but with Schweitzer not being in favor of it and the Fountains not being interested in it, it just didn't work. But they moved forward with the development. We have a great plat and there is a lot of demand. So as a real estate broker, those are the things I thought you'd want to know from me. If you have any questions.
Any questions for Shelley? Great, thanks, Shelley. Any other testimony in favor?
Mike Church with Kestrel Realty Group, 212 East 6th Street, Moscow. I would just echo Shelley. There's definitely a good bit of demand for this type of project. Having sold real estate now for quite a while and been involved with the types of folks who need this type of property, I think it's overdue and would be a really nice addition to the south end of town, again, especially given what's going on here, given kind of the plan, as I understand it, of the city of trying to have more commercial and industrial type property on the south end of town. Their, demand seemed fairly flat for a number of years. I've been here about 20 years now, and just the last number of years, it's really increased. And so as we have people wanting to start and grow and bring businesses here, I really think it's a huge benefit. So would encourage you to approve it.
Great, thank you. So any other testimony in favor?
My name is Jeff Mao, 321 East Palouse River Drive. I'm the owner and operator of a business here in town. We moved to town about 14 months ago. We are a small assembly manufacturer and e-commerce company. In that, we brought about 4 or 5 employees with us. In the last 14 months, we've hired 30 people local here in town. We anticipate to continue to grow at that pace, and there isn't really anything available in the city of Moscow to support that. So we are very excited and very supportive of this. We, in the next 5 years, anticipate adding 100 to 150 jobs. So, and we look forward to, we are one of the people who have a reservation on the property. And so for us, there really isn't another option. So to be able to stay here in Moscow and to continue to grow our business would be significant. So we are strongly in support of this project. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, I'm Mike Bell. I work with Jeff. I am the production manager at the company. And I just kind of want to echo what a lot of people are saying is I think this would be a great thing. Again, we're kind of constrained to the limits of what's available right now. And as we grow, we want to continue to be able to hire, college students and just all the men and women that we employ and just continue to grow. We don't want to kind of be stopped and not be able to help to provide jobs to a growing city. So thank you.
Super, thank you. Any additional testimony, either neutral or opposition? Okay, seeing none, Jeff, would you like to have the the parting words?
Should I defer to?
Sure.
The gal with a golden tongue.
Yeah, that's right. So many times. I really just wanted to take a moment to talk to you about my conversation with Ken Helm about that access road. That access road is a fully permitted commercial access. Nothing more will have to be done for people to use that road. So once we get the highway finished, they'll be able to, we're hoping the highway gets finished at the same time the subdivision gets finished. And so people can go right to work building. So, but I was assured that that was not, you didn't have to apply for a permit. You didn't have anything. It's a full commercial access. Just wanted to let you know.
Super, thank you. Okay, seeing no additional testimony, we'll close the public hearing. And any conversations here with the commissioners?
My only question is, do we have to make motions for each level separately, the land designation, then the zoning? then the-
We've done it both ways, but probably would be cleaner if we did all 3 separately.
That was just a question.
Yeah. Scott?
As a prior business owner that needed space like this, I wish it was 10 years earlier, Jeff. I mean, we spent a lot of years, we outgrew our facility and there was nowhere to go in Moscow. In fact, we even looked at moving out of Moscow to different areas just for space like this. So I think it's great.
Super. Dennis, any?
No, I think it fits right in.
I agree. Victoria?
And it's been talked about in the industrial to the south of town. It's been talked about in urban renewal agency is desirable. So that's where we need it.
Yeah, it's a great spot, great intersection there for it. I can't think of a better spot. So.
Cole?
Yeah, I agree.
I think this is a great fit. And interestingly enough, Sue, you raised the issue about kind of that area, not specifically in one of our recent P&Z meetings, wondering what was going to happen out there in conjunction with the highway. So this just seems like a great fit. I applaud what you're doing here. So, all right, with that.
I would add that it sounds like a nice entry to the south part of town.
Yeah, I like that. Okay, so with that, do we have a motion? And do you have a preference, Mike, on approving everything at once or separately?
I think it'd be cleaner just to approve them separately since we have 2 conditions proposed on the preliminary plat.
Okay.
So.
All right, well, let's start with the land use designation. Do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Scott, and a second, Rich second. So starting Cole with you, and Rich.
Aye.
Victoria, aye. Dennis?
Aye.
Scott?
Aye.
Sue? Aye, okay. Next will be the zoning designation, I'm sorry. So do we have a motion to approve the zoning designation as recommended?
I'll make a motion.
So Dennis's motion. Second,
I'll second.
second from Cole, and Sue, we'll start with you.
Aye.
And
Aye.
Scott, Dennis, aye.
Aye.
Victoria, Rich, and
Aye.
Cole. Okay. And lastly, now do we, the plat is the one that has the conditions, correct? Okay, so this is the third one is a recommendation for the plat with conditions as recommended by city staff. So do we have a motion?
Recommend approval of the preliminary plat with the 2 conditions as staff
Okay,
has
so
recommended.
Victoria's motion,
I'll second.
Rich second. So Sue, we'll start with you
Aye.
again.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye?
Aye.
Okay, approved. And last item is recommendation for staff to prepare the RCS, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so,
That's a no-brainer.
Yeah.
I'll move. that the
Okay.
Staff be directed.
and Dennis is second. So Cole, we'll start with you.
Aye.
Rich? Victoria, aye. Dennis?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so we're all approved. Thank you very much. Great project. I look forward to seeing this get developed. This is great, and thanks for coming in tonight. Yeah, yeah.
So badly.
That's great. I agree.
Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, yeah, no,
For 10 years.
I'm delighted. So, yeah. Thanks, Jeff. Okay, moving on. The city and council, the council and commission joint meeting topics. I have one to start with. And it's kind of based on a recent article that I read about URA and the approval of the Legacy Crossing. And guess what issue came up? Yes, ma'am. And having been down that road, that rocky road, I think we need to have a conversation on that topic with council. So I would, that would be my suggestion for a topic that we could talk about. And we can provide some background and history for our walk down that interesting lane. Anyway, that was one that really came to mind. And I mean, we beat that subject to death all the time, but I think it's an important one to have in this particular case because we know that that's going to come back to us. So. Yeah. So any other?
I just wanted to reiterate that that's a really good topic because just recently, I don't know if it was anyway, it was on television. It was a whole it was on NPR, discussion of the gentleman who wrote the book about how parking is basically ruling towns, ruling the world.
Yep.
And it suggests, my comments have always been, there's not enough parking downtown. And then I really looked at that maybe by having less parking, you encourage more public transportation. And my thing is like, I look at this, he says 100 jobs. I go, we need to move the bus down to the new area. And I know I know it's not cheap. And I know back when it was $85 an hour to run a bus, but I think that's a discussion for where the town is going and what we want to do about it.
I think that it certainly has my vote for something that we need to have as conversation. It was an interesting, the fellow, it was a New York Times article recently about the fellow that wrote this book. I can't remember the title of it now, but basically he is, and it was largely a New York City-based issue or a large urban areas, but it was the point that you're making, and I think it's worthy.
Well, when we look at the fact that mall parking is based on Black Friday, that's what they, you must have all the parking for Black Friday. Well, Black Friday doesn't exist anymore with online. So it was just a whole interesting thing
Yeah.
about where the
Yep.
town is
I
going.
agree. So other suggestions, I don't want to beat the parking thing to death, but any other thoughts about what we would like to talk to
So,
Council about?
of course, affordable housing comes up all the time, and the climate action plan should be considered with all things. And actually, part of what our discussion would be things that we've already been trying to do. So densification and the new subdivision types that we've come up with that help conserve resources. And that plays into the climate action plan. And water is going to come in here. So water is always an issue too. Those are the biggies. They're out there. But we need to make sure council and P&Z understand what each other are doing and have done, and what more might we try to tackle.
And just as importantly, what we can do.
Yes. versus-
So I think that, I mean, we probably could fill a whole day just on those topics alone, but I think that those certainly are all worth having as a discussion. So, and I don't want to get the agenda too crowded. I mean, I think that, and we need to leave some room for discussions that might ensue from whatever we're talking
So
about.
part of that is in public hearings, you have residents come and they ask about the water issues, and they may or may not, and many of them don't understand what densification is and why it helps. So there needs to be an understanding there. So because they'll be here at this hearing, and then they're at the council hearing. And so they're asking, or they're bringing up these issues, and we need to have a concerted page here, and for council to know, well, P&Z has done X, Y, and Z to help with that. And just better communication so that people understand where we're at and what we are doing.
And along that line, to explain densification in a way that's not frightening to people. I know my daughter lives in an area in the central peninsula of San Francisco, and she's in an area that's all small lots. And she's thinking that there's going to be a 5-story, 20-unit apartment right next door to her, between her and the next house, which I don't know if that's true, California, or not, but we're not going to do that kind of thing. So I think having some sort of not so restrictive, we can't have density, but not, just to reassure the public that we're not, that density doesn't mean we're going to take away all light from your house. Anyway, that was just.
So Mike, is that enough at least to get
Let us laugh at that.
started? And Gina, you
Well,
jump
what
in
does the
here
council
too.
wanna talk about?
I mean, there's lots to talk about, but we want to keep it within a manageable amount as well.
I thought we needed space for fights too, just in case they break out. Once you said parking. I think all of these topics could be workshops in themselves, to be really honest with you. But I agree with Victoria's statements about maybe being able to link the housing and the water and the densification. I hate that word, infill development.
There you go.
Climate action plan,
Well, it's also.
probably a different time. And that seems like one of these things is not like the other as much, but they're all hot topics.
Well, not so much maybe, I don't know how much the plan, but it's part of the water issue.
Yeah, things
It's
that we're
part of
doing.
the land use issue, because we have people come and say, you're taking away a farm to put in a subdivision, So that part of it ties into the climate, how we're addressing climate,
Yeah.
not the whole plan.
Yeah, and I mean, we don't want to necessarily get into deeply into a topic that another commission really would be having the conversation with council. So, but I think as they relate,
As they relate.
yeah, that,
I would almost pull the climate action plan out of it, just because that makes it a little bit more of a polarizing topic. But I think you can very effectively address the water
Okay.
issue in that area, because that does, you're exactly right. It comes up every single time, and I can pinpoint the gentleman that brings it up. And so I think it's important to address it, because this does represent
Yeah.
another
Yeah.
another
yeah, that's
subdivision or
fine.
another
It doesn't
division.
have to be labeled climate action.
Yeah, it just gets,
But it plays into it.
indeed.
any other thoughts that would,
Well, I just want to say is, I agree that there are things that can go to other commissions, like say transportation. But with our discussion with the city, the council can then direct transportation
Mhm.
to look at this, or direct,
Plus
Other-
commissions are working together more.
yeah.
yeah, no, that's a good idea. Okay, does that get us, I mean, we'll be talking about this again, I'm sure, and we
Sure.
don't have a date certain for this meeting, I don't think yet, do we?
Yeah, I think they were targeting end of summer, early fall
Okay.
for that, yeah.
Okay, any other ideas, issues, comments that anybody wants to make? Okay, we'll move on to the citizen survey question, and you may have just answered my question, because one of the things that I was thinking about with the survey question was very likely some usable topics would come out of our meeting with council. But if the meeting's not going to be until after we have to submit the survey questions, and maybe we need to kind of go back on that one. So I know from the last meeting, developments were, I think, something that Nels talked about. I don't know. I don't have any real super insights on additional suggestions, but that's due in August. Is that right?
Correct, yeah.
So I brought up using the either or scenario versus the Likert scale, which I do not like. It's good for some things. I don't think it's good for this. And the 15 minutes before I came to the meeting, I tried to start brainstorming a couple of potential questions. So I will work on that.
Okay.
And they're just priming the pump. It's not going to be polished, finished or anything, but just to get across my idea of either or.
Okay.
So, and the two I was doing was parking and affordable housing. I know you hate me, but that's.
No, it's interesting that you mentioned parking, because I agree. That was one of my thoughts too. So figuring out how to word a question like that.
I
So,
mean, we've got like four or five topics right there, and just, but it's just a starting point. I just haven't gotten to it yet because I'm trying to get spring work done.
why don't we keep it on the agenda, and we'll just kind of revisit this as appropriate. I mean, it may be a very short discussion, or it might generate some additional ideas and give you an opportunity to kind of try out some of your ideas. So,
Priming the pump.
Yeah.
I'm priming the pump, so y'all could come up
right.
with.
Yeah, there you go. Okay.
The sustainable environment never takes my ideas, so you don't have to take them either. But some.
Okay. Have we beat the subjects to death? So, Transportation Commission report, Joel is not with us tonight, so we will not have that. Mike, any other announcements?
None from staff, no.
Next meeting, June 14th, and, oh, yes, thank you. We have been provided with another copy. Take a look at it. I'll take a look, and if there's any suggestions for relevant topics, I'll let Mike know. And if any of you see anything that you think, Dennis and I always review the agenda that Mike puts out. So if it looks like there's something that we need to add, we can we can do that. If you got any ideas? Any previews for the next meeting?
We'll have a public hearing, but it'll be legislative. So it's, I don't know if you've watched the last couple of council meetings, but they had discussed revising the appeals procedure for some land use actions, administrative and interpretation on our behalf. And so that's, going through Planning and Zoning Commission for a recommendation on the city council. So we've queued that up for a public hearing next meeting.
Okay.
Yep.
Super. Can you enlighten me a little bit more on the subject? I didn't watch the council meeting, so.
Why not?
It's really just in regards to the process that you go through on appeal. So if there's, say, a zoning administrator decision that ends up getting appealed to the Board of Adjustment, revises that process, and then any Board of Adjustment decision. So if there's a conditional use permit that's denied or approved, and so an aggrieved party ends up appealing that to City Council, there's a very specific, almost Robert's Rules set of procedures that you should follow that are a little convoluted and they're contradictory in the code. We have an old resolution that got repealed that contradicts what we have in our ordinance. And so, after review from the city attorney, she's recommended that we revise a number of things. And so that's pretty much it.
Okay. So I can only recall, at least in my time here, that we had one of our decisions appealed to City Council. But it's incumbent upon us to actually do the revision to the code. Is that
just because it falls within Title IV, which is the zoning code? So just because it falls within there, in that section, the commission's required to conduct a public hearing.
okay? So in the next packet, there'll be some additional
We'll have the
language
proposed
changes.
ordinance in legislative format.
Okay.
So
So,
it's fairly simple, but
Okay.
but as I recall from council meeting, you mentioned Board of Adjustment. It really is targeting how they make their case, justify their case or explain their case or whatever.
it sets out specific criteria for what you can appeal. So there's, I think, 5 specific areas that you can appeal that are based upon. And so, you can't just submit an appeal because you didn't like the decision. You actually have to have a reason, and a valid reason that's listed in the code, that maybe the procedure was done incorrectly, and that's why you're appealing the decision. So it lists those in code. I think that's case law or shows up somewhere else in Idaho law. So we're inserting that, and then just goes through. It's very specific when you have an appeal. It's not a public hearing. But there is testimony from the appellant, obviously is able to get up and make their case. And then could be the appellee could get up there as well if there is one. And so it really just, and then lays out you're sustaining the decision. You're sustaining the decision in part, you're reversing the decision, or you're remanding the decision back to another board. So it really just cleans some sections up and adds some information in there.
So I was like, Rob going, why is planning and zoning doing this? Because it didn't seem.
Well, planning and zoning very often makes a recommendation to the council. So it'd be the council's decision that would be appealed. Board of Adjustment oftentimes makes the final decision. There's never a recommendation the board makes. So more often than not, their decisions get appealed. And so that's where we see the appeals going to city council is typically a Board of Adjustment decision. Some circumstances, the commission could make a final decision. So when we review the design guidelines for the Legacy Crossing project, 6 and Jackson, it only goes to planning and zoning. So if somebody's aggrieved by that, they could technically appeal it to city council. Planning and developments that aren't part of a subdivision, like identity, only goes to city council. So if somebody was aggrieved by that decision, they could have appealed it to city council. So we just have very few items that the commission makes the final decision on. It usually is a recommendation to city council. So that's why we don't see very many appeals happen
at the commission level. So.
One other thing, I'm going to backstep here a little bit. The language that we gave you for the approvals tonight for all three of the issues, recommending the approvals to city council, but was the language clear enough for you okay. I just wanted to double check that we hadn't misstepped here a little bit. So, okay, anything else for the good of the order? A little bit shorter meeting tonight, but went well. And I think that was a great project that we approved tonight. So, okay.
It's just very well done.
Yeah.
Very well presented.
Yeah. Yeah, very much so. All right. With that, meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much.